Hello everyone and welcome to the channel. I'm Emmanuel, I'm an Airbus pilot, and in today's video let's go over a common mistake done by many flight simmers when reading their checklists. And that is, what are you actually checking? Now, many flight simmers are checking switch positions instead of a system status. Now, what do I mean with that? Well, let's start with a general example, and then a little bit later in this video we will also talk about why this applies mostly to Airbus aircraft, but not necessarily to Boeings, even though to a certain extent it does. Now, it is common knowledge for pilots that you are always supposed to check that the system is actually doing what you want it to do when you do an input anywhere on the panel. However, many pilots tend to, well, kinda start forgetting about that during their career, and that especially applies to flight sim pilots. So let's have a look at a couple of ways to read some checklists in Airbus aircraft, and then I will tell you exactly where to look at when you are doing those checks. So let's start with a cockpit preparation checklist. The first item is gear pins and covers. Now, that is something that you can mostly only check on the outside of the airplane, because you want to be sure that there are no pins inserted. However, you're not only checking on the outside, you're also going for the inside, and depending on your company and where they store the stuff, for example, in my airline the pins would be located down here, so that's where you look into making sure that there are no pins in there, and then the pilot who did the walk around is also going to confirm that the pins and covers are actually removed from the outside. But now we already start looking into the actual topic of this video. The next item is fuel quantity. So you don't only check the fuel on board over here, but you also go into the fuel page on the ECAM down here. So the correct answer to the fuel quantity challenge is not only 5,480 kilograms, but you're also looking in here and making sure that the fuel is actually balanced. You can see a slight imbalance over here because the APU is draining a little bit of fuel as I'm running it for air conditioning, as it's rather cold outside, but you can see this is basically balanced. So the correct answer to that challenge is 5,480 kilogram balanced. And now comes the couple important items. Seat belts. So most flight simmers will look up here and say on. Nope, incorrect. You look down here and make sure it's on. Now, you then check the switch position, make sure that it's actually on and not in the auto position if your airplane is equipped with one, which many Airbuses usually are. Next up, ADIRS. The correct way to respond to that challenge is to go to the data page, position monitor, verify the mode that your IRS is operating in, and you can only verify that on the FMS. You can't verify that looking at the overhead panel. Many flight simmers are looking over here and say nav because the switches are in nav. But a switch may be broken. Your IRS may be operating in attitude mode rather than in nav mode. For that reason, you look down here, you verify the mode that it's operating in, and you verify the drift of the IRS. Now, a little bit of drift is totally normal and nothing to worry about. However, you absolutely want to make sure on the system that it is actually operating correctly. Then, baro reference. Again, many flight simmers are looking at the EFIS control panel. Don't do that. You're looking at the primary flight display and the standby. Then you say QNH 1030. Compare all the three. The other pilot answers as well. Cockpit preparation checklist complete. Then we got things like the before start checklist. Park and brake. Where do you look? Many flight simmers look here. Well, no, you look here, because that's where you can see if the park and brake is actually set. That's where the brake pressure is located. Always remember, you might release the switch over here, but if the switch fails, remember it's all electrical connections. A connector might be broken, and the brake is still set over here and they start pushing you. That's gonna get expensive. Next up, takeoff speeds and thrust. Most flight simmers exclusively look down here in the FMS. No. You look at the display, make sure V1 is shown, make sure V2 is shown. The only thing that you can only get from down here is VR and the flex temp. However, V1 and V2, you need to make sure that they are shown up here. There may always be a miscommunication between the entry that you do on the takeoff performance page in the FMS and the rest of the airplane systems. There may be an FMS failure involved. For that reason, make sure to once again check the system status. Now the windows on the beacon you can only check by looking at the actual levers, that is true, but you get the idea that I'm running in with this particular video. To give you one more example, if we have a look into the taxi checklist, which is where quite some common misconceptions happen again. Now, flight controls checked, flap setting, be sure to look at the ECAM and don't look at the flap lever. Now, radar and predictive wind shear. Many flight simulators are looking down here. Well, don't. Look up here. If the radar and predictive wind shear systems are off, then you are not going to see the tilt indication on the ND, and you are not going to see the predictive wind shear amber or green indication on your ECAM. Engine start selector. Again, that's a switch that can break. The ECAM, however, is going to show you the true position, because when it is in ignition start, then you're going to get the ignition message on the ECAM. So, like that, always check system statuses and don't check lever positions. That's the important thing I need you to take away from this particular video. Now, especially people coming from the Boeing 737 might be very prone to error when reading those checklists, because on the 737 for many things, like for example the passenger signs, you can only read the lever position. You don't have any actual indication on what the actual system status is. Again, one of the huge advantages of modern EFIS aircraft over the good old Boeing 737. So, I do hope that you learned something from this video. If you did, then do let me know in the comments down below the video, and be sure to leave a like, as it does really help out the channel. If you're up for more, don't forget to subscribe, and if you really love what I'm doing, would appreciate a small donation through the Buy Me Coffee link in the video description below. Thank you very much for watching, and I see you all again on the next one.